Singapore approves the use of NOVAVAX's COVID-19 vaccine, but shipments will not arrive for a few months. A new treatment facility opens today for children and the elderly to help hospitals cope with the Omicron wave. And social gambling among family and friends may soon be legalized. Welcome to The Big Story. I'm Olivia Quay. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you don't miss a single episode. The Health Sciences Authority has approved the NOVAVAX COVID-19 vaccine for individuals here 18 years old and above. The vaccine is manufactured under the name Nuvaxovid and was granted interim authorization on February the 3rd under the Pandemic Special Access route. Well, the first batch of the vaccine is expected to arrive in the next few months. The vaccination regimen comprises 2 5-microgram doses to be administered 3 weeks apart. For those medically ineligible to receive mRNA shots, Singapore's Expert Committee on COVID-19 Vaccination says Nuvaxovid is preferred to the Sinovac vaccine due to Sinovac's lower efficacy. The committee has also recommended Nuvaxovid as an acceptable alternative to the mRNA vaccines for booster jabs for those 18 and above, which should be administered about 5 months after the last dose of the primary regimen. From today, a new COVID-19 treatment facility and the Singapore Expo will care for children and the elderly. Located in Hall 9, there are about 600 beds available for children and their caregivers, as well as 224 beds for the elderly. Children aged 5 to 11 currently have the highest rate of infection here, while those aged 12 to 19 have the next highest infection rate.
Also, the fact that there are now family rooms, that is important because Omicron tend to affect children and we are seeing more children being hospitalized. They are experiencing not severe symptoms, but to have a place where they can move in with a caregiver and recover peacefully and uneventfully, I think is important. So this facility is a significant addition to our Omicron response.
Physical social gambling may soon be legalized under new laws proposed in Parliament today, which will set clear parameters for what's acceptable. Well, if passed, the 2 bills proposed will see the setting up of the new Gambling Regulation Authority, which will regulate Singapore's entire gambling landscape. A key change is the legalization of physical social gambling among family and friends without any age limit. But the participants have to be members of the same family or friends. The gambling cannot be conducted in the course of any business and it must take place in someone's home. Another proposed change is the introduction of licensing regimes for gambling products. And several new offences will also be introduced, including those relating to underage gambling and those who have been excluded from gambling, as well as proxy gambling to criminalise gambling through someone else. Education Minister Chan Chun Sing says the number of students reported as having special educational needs has risen by about 5% in the last 3 years. But support is available for such families in each stage of their life. Mr. Chan was responding to several MPs' parliamentary questions about what more can be done. Now, it comes after the tragedy last month when 2 11-year-old twin boys were found dead in a canal in Upper Bukit Timah. They're understood to have had special needs. Their father was subsequently charged with the murder of one of the boys. Without going into details of the case, Mr. Chan urged the public to step up in caring for families whose children have special needs.
It is our goal for children with special needs to reach their full potential, to be confident in themselves, and to be equipped with life skills and values so that they can grow up to lead as much as possible, as normal, as independent a life as possible. This starts from the early years where early detection and timely intervention are critical. All parents plan on providing our children in every possible way until they reach independence as adults. So we can all understand when parents discover that their child will need a lot more support for a lot longer, even into adulthood, we can experience the heartache, shock, and even fear. This is an unplanned journey and can be a challenging one. Many of us know such families amongst our friends, relatives, or in the community. Some of us are ourselves family of a special person.
Mr. Chan also outlined existing support for children in both mainstream and special education schools. He said about 27,000 students with mild special educational needs are in mainstream schools, and they're supported by teachers who use inclusive classroom practices, as well as allied educators who specialize in learning and behavioral support. Some may need pull-out sessions during or after curriculum time because of additional needs. Another 7,000 students with moderate to severe needs currently attend 22 special education schools. Mr. Chan says the government is prepared to try out new ideas to better help special needs children and their caregivers. Social and Family Development Minister Mazakos Zulkifli says these caregivers can find support beyond the school setting, like the online enabling guide. MSF and SG Enable also work with social service agencies to increase awareness of the services on offer, from as early as when children are diagnosed with special needs at birth or as they develop. Giving an update on the internal investigations into the handling of the case of former domestic helper Pata Liani, Home Affairs Minister K. Shanmugam says the police officers involved were found to have neglected their duties, resulting in lapses. He listed 3 that were found.
The investigations in this case found that both the IO and his supervisor had neglected their duties. Neglect of duty means the failure to take proper action to perform a required task. The IO who handled the police report handled it as a routine theft case, and it was so. But there were some lapses. The lapses include the fact that the IO did not visit the scene of crime promptly to carry out investigation and gather evidence. This contributed to a break in the chain of custody for some exhibits. Second, the IO did not properly verify some of the claims made by the parties during the investigations. Third, his supervisor did not provide sufficient guidance, which contributed to the lapses. The IAO also took into account the intense pressure under which the IO was working under. He was handling many ongoing investigations, prosecutions, conducting arrest operations at the same time.
In other news, according to the Traffic Police's annual stats on the road traffic situation here, more people were killed or injured in road accidents last year as Singapore resumed activities to live with COVID-19. 107 people died on the roads last year compared to 83 in 2020. But the Traffic Police stressed that this figure was lower than in 2019 before the pandemic. More people also got hurt in traffic accidents last year, some 7,200, up from about 6,600 in 2020. As part of Fair Price Group's initiative to help consumers cope with the rising cost of living, from March the 4th, on every Friday, you can enjoy a 5% discount on 100 daily staples like rice, oil and vegetables at all Fair Price supermarkets and hypermarkets. And from today, you can get hot low sugar, no sugar and no milk coffee and tea at more than 80 kopitiam and NTUC food fair outlets for just 90 cents. DBS kicks off earnings season for Singapore banks, reporting better than expected fourth quarter net profit of $1.39 billion. Its full-year earnings also came in at a record $6.8 billion. Looking ahead, the bank says it's poised to benefit from rising interest rates in the coming months. And in sports, it all came down to the last 2 minutes in American football's biggest game. The Los Angeles Rams scoring a late touchdown to beat the Cincinnati Bengals 23-20 in the Super Bowl. The Rams also making history as only the second team to win the title in their own stadium. The US says Russia could invade Ukraine at any time and might create a surprise pretext for an attack. Washington stepping up warnings over the weekend after President Joe Biden told Russian President Vladimir Putin in a phone call that the West would respond decisively to any invasion, and such a move would harm and isolate Moscow. Meanwhile, Ukraine has advised airlines to avoid flying over the open waters of the Black Sea from Monday to Saturday due to Russian naval exercises taking place there. The tensions might be thousands of kilometers away from here, but they do have a knock-on effect for this part of the world. I want to bring in our China Bureau Chief, Tan Dong-wei, and Japan correspondent, Walter Sim. Well, Dawn, let's start with you. What is China's position on the current tensions between Russia and Ukraine, and does it matter to Beijing?
Hi, Olivia. Well, officially, China has been quite measured in its response to the crisis, calling for calm and for all parties to refrain from making any moves that might escalate tensions. But it has also spoken up for Russia by saying that the US and Europe should address Russia's legitimate security concerns. When President Vladimir Putin visited China for the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics about 10 days ago, he met with President Xi Jinping and they issued a very lengthy joint statement, which was significant, not just in the size and scope of it, but also endorsement of certain positions in support of each other. The friendship was described as having no limits, and China, for the first time, has piped up about its objection to NATO expansion and essentially backed Russia's opposition to Ukraine joining this military alliance. And Russia, in turn, stood up for China by saying that it, too, opposes any form of independence displayed by Taiwan, which, as we know, Beijing has warned that it will launch an attack on if it declares independence. The other significant show of support that was captured in the joint statement was China backing Russia's proposal for long-term legally binding security guarantees from Europe. Some political watchers have noted that these two presidents also signed new energy deals that will boost Russia's supply of oil and gas to China, which may help it ease whatever economic sanctions that may come from its attack on Ukraine. But I think there is a larger consensus that China would not want Russia to invade Ukraine, not least because it would be a big reputational hit. China has a long-standing policy of non-interference. And in 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea, China, which has often stood with Russia on UN Security Council votes, decided to abstain. And there are expectations that if Russia does invade Ukraine this time, China will again abstain at the UN instead of a veto. So there is plenty at stake for China, and it wouldn't want to sour its relationship with Europe by pushing it even closer to the US. It also wouldn't want to sour its relationship with Ukraine, which it has Belt and Road projects with, and also counts China as its largest trading partner.
Right. Well, Walter, on to you next. What is Japan's view on the conflict between Russia and Ukraine? Whose side is it on?
Well, Japan is on Ukraine's side in the conflict, obviously, as it joins its ally, the United States, as well as other Western democratic partners in championing a rules-based international order that has no place for the annexation of territory by the means of aggression and violence. But that said, Japan is also treading very carefully, given that Russia is a neighboring country, and Japan really much prefers if tensions can be diffused via diplomatic means. So last week, Japan's Diet passed a resolution in solidarity with Kiev, while Tokyo has also promised to divert spare LNG resources to Europe, despite being a major importer itself. But Japan is also said to be wary to do more at this point. And this is because it has an eye on Russia, with which it forged a semi-positive bilateral relationship in recent years, especially under former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. But that said, the two countries are currently still plodding their way towards a World War II peace treaty, which has not yet been signed so many decades after the war. And both countries are also hoping to resolve their territorial dispute over what Japan calls the Northern Territories and what Russia terms as the Southern Kuriles that Russia seized in the final days of the war. But what I think Japan is also very concerned about is the prospect of Russia and China working even more closely together should Japan antagonize Russia in the lead up to this Ukraine-Russia conflict. This may prove to be destabilizing in the region, and Japan already has its feet in many pies tackling such issues as China's regional aggression as well as North Korean missile threat. So Russia already appears to be ramping up its military activity in the region. We see Russia holding ongoing military live firing drills on the disputed territories it has with Japan, while Russia and China have also been holding joint Air Force and Navy drills as well. So all this is very concerning for Japan, I think, as this is really happening in its backyard.
And thank you to our Japan correspondent Walter Sim, as well as China Bureau Chief Tan Donwei. For more reporting on the Russia-Ukraine tensions, go to str.sg/Asia. Our correspondents explaining why any conflict on Ukraine's border with Russia will have significant consequences for Asia. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and our YouTube channel for more videos. Subscribe by hitting the red button below. I'm Olivia Quay. Thanks for watching The Big Story and see you tomorrow.